Welcome to Freelance Sucks. Here we discuss the dark side of freelancing about which nobody usually talks out loud. In this show, we speak with experienced freelancers, and I'm sure listening to their stories helps you prepare for freelancer challenges. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Matthew Mottola, the CEO of the Human Cloud, the leading authority for leaders embracing the freelance economy, whose career looks like a dog chasing his own tail because he freelances, helps enterprises hire freelancers, and builds software that connects the two. So, welcome, Matthew.
Thanks, Jared. That was beautiful. I'm going to have you do my intros now.
I will share the little secret with people that we are recording this episode a little later than we should, but still, the first question for you, what is the most challenging part of being a freelancer?
I think the toughest part is there's no security and no stability. And it goes more than just, hey, I have two clients that can cancel me at any time. It goes more than just typically there's a feast or famine cycle. I think it's the fact that you literally are on your own. And it's both a beauty, but it also totally sucks. And so more than just financially, it can hurt. Also the fact of what are the right decisions, right? What does my career plan look like? And when you're working a job, or even when you're an entrepreneur, it seems like there's a path that you should be going. Whereas a freelancer, not really. And then add into this, there's lots of noise that you don't know if you should listen to or not. And so there's plenty of like freelance influencers that I think most are full of shit. But it's so I would add the lack of stability and security, I think are by far the number one challenges.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know, to be honest. I think this is where I'm definitely not an influencer because I everyone's path is different. I know for me, I'm very what's the word? I'm very objective with money. And so for me, I'm always looking at what's the base that I need to live? Am I at that base? And then I'm very, very direct with myself about the percentage I can put into savings, percentage I put into cash. And so I'm kind of ruthless with myself about it. And I think that's what works for me. For me, the question I'm always asking myself is, do I have rent covered and for how many months? And if everything goes terribly, how do I make sure I protect my family? That's really it. There's numerous other ways, like community area, right? That's a great way to make sure you're in the right communities for you. There's multiple channels, so make sure that you have both the people you trust, but also the people that are second degree connections to you. Beyond that, I think is when it starts to get a little bit too general in terms of everyone has a unique. But for me, it literally is just being ruthless about how much money is in my bank today, what do I need for tomorrow, and just making sure that my family's taken care of.
What is plan B?
I don't think there's a plan B anymore, to be honest, because for most freelancing itself is a plan B. The way that I think about it is that, and the way that I've thought about it since I was like a kid, is when you hit the working world, you have to be the best in the world at something because no one just gives you money for free. And so I've kind of always had that thinking. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. It's definitely not the best in terms of mental health and that kind of side of it. It's definitely more of a survival mindset. But I think for me, I'm kind of always operating in an opportunist, you could call it a plan B mindset. And the way that I think about freelancing is generally you have 2 to 5 clients at one time, you have one anchor, and then you have 2 to 5 of really good connections in your network. For me, I kind of sit in this weird place, like I mentioned, where I freelance, but then I also build companies and I help companies build their freelance workforces. So for me, I just apply that thinking also into our clients and our customers in terms of, can we make sure we're servicing them? But so I think plan B, I just don't have one. But I think that always making sure that there's opportunity within reach is something that I'm always planning for. And I don't know, I think that's the plan B.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Sometimes I'm also thinking like, what is my plan B? And then when the war started in Ukraine and you had to leave your country, okay, not country, your city, your home, your apartment overnight, to go to a safer place, I was like, whatever you have, it doesn't matter if you have good people around you. So what I hear that you also build your network, and it's kind of like we can't call it plan B, but it's like something that might help really very much. And you also talked about this career path, and you're definitely not the first person who are saying to me that people are thinking, okay, I'm a freelancer, I'm doing what I'm doing, but how can I grow? So what career path do you see for you?
It's a really good question. So I think that when I think about my own personal career path, I'm more in the stage of, what's that saying where it's like you plant the seed and you harvest the seed and then you just reap the benefits. And so I'm more in a stage right now of scaling the level that I'm already at. So I'm no longer in the stage of needing to build up. It's more so, okay, let's take advantage of the opportunities at hand. I think for me, it did mean being the best in the world at the freelance economy. For others, it can mean being the best software developer, being the best writer. I was told early on, there's two paths, and it's you're the best in the skill or the best in an industry. And the skill one is way easier. The industry one, you have to have a lot of scars in order to get there. So fortunately, this industry is young. So I was able to kind of, get it quicker. But I think that principle has also held true in my life. So when it comes to skills, I'm really the best at nothing on a skill basis. I can hack together product and sales in terms of skills, and then that kind of falls into marketing. But in reality, I'm the best at embracing freelance workforces and freelance models. And so that's sort of where I fit. I think in terms of the freelance economy, where it's tough is that, it's been a dumbbell economy. So there's been a lot at the bottom and there's been a few at the top, and the ones at the top have done really, 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 really well. And we're now seeing more of a career path and also people more at the mid-level coming into the freelance economy, which is beautiful. And what usually I would say the defining factors is, just like in full-time employment, what experiences do you have and how relatable are those experiences to where you want to be? And so, for example, if you want to be a VP at a tech company, did you work at Microsoft? Did you work at Google? If you have that logo, then it'll be easier for you to get the job. Freelancing is similar. The difference is you have much more opportunities of relevancy. And so it's, from a hiring manager perspective, I need a developer with an experience in fintech, or I need a writer with experience in life science. And so you still have to show up. Prior, it was you need to show up with the right logo. Now it's you need to show up with the right experiences.
Sounds, yeah, very similar to full-time employee, but also like not that easy, So basically, the next question: what is the most time-consuming thing you must deal with as a freelancer?
Ooh. Well, let's separate it by client-facing, client supporting, and administrative. And so realistically, from my personal experience and what I've seen in terms of the best freelancers, it's usually, say, 60% client facing, 30% client supporting, and 10% admin. And the admin is your taxes, it's your payroll. If you yourself have created an S Corp for yourself, it is just basically all the crap that's not related to the business. The client supporting is everything you need to keep the good clients. So that is weekly status reports, if that's what it is that you're working on. It is things in the back end to ensure that you can support for your clients. So making sure you have the right tech, the right licenses, all those sort of things. And then client facing is the work itself. Now, what's a little dirty secret is that generally what separates the good from the moderate freelancers is the client supporting. So it's kind of like the 80-20, right? 20% of the client supporting tasks fuel 80% of the perception that the client has of you. And so as a freelancer, you're constantly balancing. We'll use a website as an example. It might take you 20 hours to actually get the MVP up of the site. And it might take you 5 hours to present that MVP and prepare the kickoff calls and all those various things. But those 5 hours are going to what make the client feel like you really have it under control. No different than being a VP or having some sort of leadership position. You learn real quick that the perception is usually more important than the actual work.
Yeah, exactly. Talking to people, presenting your work. And what if, I bet it's not about you, but what if freelancer do not have good presentational skills?
It's such a good question. And you know what's funny, Yuri, is Mark has a similar, I asked him a similar question to this. So I think number one, if a freelancer knows they don't have good, I guess you could say soft skills, then it's going to be really tough. Just straight up, it's going to be really tough. But it's going to come down to putting yourself in very, very, very outcome driven type situations. And so the better you are with soft skills, the more you can deal with more arbitrary contracts, meaning more T&M, or just secure me because of my time / my skills, not necessarily a direct outcome. I think that's going to be the best way to go about if you don't necessarily, because there's two parts of this, right? There's capacity and capability. You might be good at soft skills, but you don't want to. And so you might like really getting in the weeds, getting in the details. And employment is kind of beautiful for that in some ways, right? It doesn't force you to sell yourself every month, or in reality, sell yourself every stand-up.
Yeah.
Some people love the fact, though, of being measured by their impact and how well they've actually done. So I was talking to a freelancer yesterday. He's like, he switched. He was, I think he was 10 years at a prior big company. And he's like, I love that it's all about my impact. He's like, I'm not doing any of this politics anymore, and they are being ruthless about my impact. And it's like, yeah, that is the key difference. So I think, unfortunately, right now, soft skills are very, very important as a freelancer. And if you don't want to, that's totally fine. But the way to mitigate that is just really be crucial on the outcomes, really focus on the outcomes.
What is the most nerve-consuming thing?
Ooh, nerve consuming things that we would say frustrating or anxiety inducing. Which one would you say?
Ah, it's a good question from you,
Yeah,
like
because they're kind of separate.
I
They're
feel
right.
like what I mean about nerve consuming, when you really kind of like, not piss off, but you're really nervous about something.
Really nervous. Okay, I'm gonna take the anxiety inducing. So the only thing that gives me anxiety is client uncertainty related to payment and long-standing working relationship. And what I mean by that is purely, and I work mostly with large enterprises, so purely the fact that there's things outside of your control. And so, for example, there was a client that took a decision to work with a certain influencer that tanked their brand value, and it then put our working relationship at risk, just because it meant that there was going to be some budgets frozen, totally unrelated to our work, So that, I'd say, is anxiety inducing, just because it's out of my control. I think the other side is the frustrating, which I've been in it so long now that nothing frustrates me about it. It's more so just data. And so it at first was very frustrating. Things like, clients asking for multiple revisions, clients changing their mind, clients just talk. That at first was frustrating. Now I know how to mitigate that, right? Because if they keep asking for revisions, well, that's called scope creep. If they keep changing their mind, that's also called scope creep, right? If they keep talking, well, then I'm just going to convert the relationship into a way that's more about the outcomes. So I think the frustrating ones you figure out how to manage.
And it's all about experience, I guess.
Yeah.
And what about professional loneliness as a freelancer?
Oof. I'm blessed that I'm very introverted. And so I'm okay with not talking to a human for weeks, and I will be better. I will be better for it. Yeah, I feel for those. It is definitely could be lonelier. I have my family, which is great. I have some really good friends that potentially are not in my space or our space. but I can't imagine what it would be like if I wanted to go into an office. That would be a very, very hard transition, which is where you come in, Yuri, because you're the community expert. So you should be answering that question.
Yeah, but you know, there are different answers to this question because I can answer from a community builder perspective and from a community expert perspective. Because, if I'm building a community, I know that the more people there, the better they connect, the higher results they will achieve. Because 1 + 1 does not equals 2. It's more than 2. It's much more than 2. And from a community expert perspective, kind of as a freelancer myself, many community teams are the team of 1 or 2 people. And sometimes you don't know if things that are going on in your community are good or bad, or is everyone struggle with the same? But it's so much easier because we have huge communities of community experts, and I feel like it's the best place in the world, because people know what the community value, and you can imagine community of community builders. It's like the best place to be, So
yeah,
I definitely feel it, but I know where to go.
I'd say the toughest part about just being remote is that it is tough to build teams. And so I know currently right now there's a bunch of like binary opinions about is remote good or bad. And we're seeing, return to the office folk, we're seeing remote first folk. And I can understand both sides. When I was at Microsoft, I very intentionally went into the office for some things and didn't for others. When I was early at a startup, oh my God, it was an open floor concept. It was horrible for me. It was absolutely horrendous. It was literally like hell. I could not drop a worse hell. Was an open floor concept. So it's depending on the individual.
Depends, yes. If your friend wanted to become a freelancer, what are top 3 things you'd advise them to consider before doing it?
First would be, what I always tell people is don't quit your job. That's literally the first thing. But I would say from that, that's kind of like the foundation. The second would be scope your value into deliverables and just try out pitching those deliverables. And so if you were a 7 years software developer over at Microsoft, don't just say, hey, can I work for you as a freelancer? I was a 7+ year. Like, no, scope into what are the deliverables that you can do. Can you build a website? What languages can you build from? How long will it take? How much will it cost? And go from there. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second would be to hold yourself to lead metrics and don't get caught up in the lag metrics. And so a lead metric is the metrics that sort of directly result in a bunch of other things. And so a lead metric for you might be, I'm going to meet with 2 people each week until I get something. And so I'm going to meet with 2 people each week to pitch myself until I get my first 2 clients. And so that's the second piece of advice is what are those lead metrics? I'd very, and then I guess, this will help the third thing. The third thing is to just take a grain of salt with anyone saying this is freelancer best practices. Everyone has their unique path. Most likely the people that are doing really well actually came from an existing network. They probably worked at an agency. They probably took their boss was their first client, most likely. And so when you see all this stuff out there about, everyone needs to have a personal brand and this is the best way to freelance, hopefully it worked for the person saying it. I doubt it did. But it's your own path. And so whatever it is, whether it's you think you need a website, whatever you think it is you need business insurance, all these things, like it is your own path. And the last thing I'd say is that if you want to shortcut and accelerate, we kind of talked about it last time, I would look at marketplaces to potentially soft land.
Yeah,
they're good. I think everything serves a purpose, right? And marketplaces are there to accelerate your path. Yeah. So those are the 4 things I'd say.
Yeah, and I even know that like 9 a.m. is the marketplace, and I know that we genuinely want to help freelancers. So I believe that every other founders also have this idea in their mind. And Matthew, I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question, if you were starting freelancing today, what is one thing you would have done differently?
Nothing. To be honest, Yuri, nothing. Yeah, I wouldn't. I would have, part of me wants to say I would have saved more money, but no, I would have done nothing different. I would have prioritized maybe, I don't know. No, nothing. To be honest, absolutely nothing.
Got it. Matthew, thank you so much for sharing your challenges and for being so openly honest.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Yuri.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.